So the assignments for me this week were very difficult, and it was a challenging process. It took me quite a while. So part of my process for answering the questions was having a chart mapped out here, so I could easily move through the different criteria. So is it possible for the conclusion to be false? No. Then it's valid for a deductive argument, so I could move through the chart. But that being said, the most difficult part was not going down the criteria for it being valid or being sound, um, or sorry, cogent if it's inductive. Um, it was deciding whether they are deductive or inductive to begin with, and there was a few different strategies I used for that. So going through my assignment, as you can see, I wrote all over it. That was part of what helped me move through it, was kind of writing some of my reasoning out so I could also get a better grip on what I was doing. So number one, the weatherman said on television that it is going to rain today, so it will rain today. My instinct was deductive because I was mainly relying on how strong the relationship sounded between the premise and the conclusion. It seemed very strong. And then the more that I thought about it, part of a deductive argument is that the conclusion must be true based on the true premises. It must be true. It's not a probability, whereas, living in California, lots of time the weather said that it's going to rain today, and it does not rain today. There's very much a possibility of it being false. So I went ahead and said inductive, but the relationship between the premise and the conclusion is strong. It is still very likely to rain if the weatherman says that it's going to rain, even though there's a chance that it will not be true. So I put strong. True premises, I put yes, because part of the inductive chart on our workbook said that, when you're going through an inductive argument, you would assume the premises are true. So we'll assume that the weatherman said that it is going to rain today. Key evidence that requires a different conclusion, that would be no. Nothing that says otherwise. So it is a cogent argument. Number two, all gold medalists are amazing athletes. Miss Franklin and Allison Smith from the United States each won 5 gold medals in the 2012 Summer Olympics. It follows that Miss Franklin and Allison Smith are amazing athletes. So I marked that as deductive because you're moving from a general factor statement to more specific, to specific people being amazing athletes. And following the logic, it must be true. So deductive, valid. The premises are true. You cannot get a gold medal without being an amazing athlete. That just does not happen. So it is therefore sound. Everything in that argument is true. Mark is an introvert, so Mark is a person who likes to be the life of every party. So I put inductive, it's not certain, it's based on probability. That's inductive reasoning. It's also moving from a specific statement to a more general conclusion. So inductive, but the relationship is weak between the two because the premise, even though the premise is true, the relationship between them is weak. Introverts are not the life of every party, and because of that, I marked that there is key evidence that requires a different conclusion because introverted people are not generally very fond of parties. So overall, not a cogent argument. Number 4 is the one that I struggled with the most out of all of them. I couldn't decide whether it would be deductive or inductive reasoning. I tried my hardest to figure it out, and I ended up going with deductive reasoning. Either Wookiees are large, hairy primate-like creatures, or they are frog dogs. Wookiees are not frog dogs, therefore Wookiees are large, hairy, primate-like creatures. So I marked deductive. Then valid or invalid. I went with invalid because the premises are not true. Because it says either Wookiees are large, hairy, primate-like creatures, which we know they are, or they are frog dogs. And then the next statement proceeds to basically debunk that and say that they are not frog dogs. So the premise is not true. Therefore, the conclusion is invalid, essentially. It's an unsound deductive argument. For number 5, Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister of Great Britain, so she must be a citizen of Ireland. I went with inductive reasoning because we're moving from the specifics to a more general. So, specific known fact about Margaret Thatcher to making a generalization. It's also probability based. It's not a certainty. So I marked it as inductive, and I put that the relationship is very weak. The premise is true. She was the Prime Minister of Great Britain, but that does not mean that she must be a citizen of Ireland. So I put that there is key evidence that requires a different conclusion. I marked yes, so it's therefore not cogent because Great Britain does not necessarily equal Ireland. She does not need to be a citizen of Ireland just because she is the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Number 6, since Martha Gellhorn, Marie Colvine, and Christiane Amanpour, all these women, are famous and accomplished war correspondents, and since they are all women, it follows that women can make excellent war correspondents. So that one I marked as inductive reasoning, moving from specific examples of people to a general statement about women being excellent war correspondents, which would make it inductive reasoning. That's a very strong relationship. The premises are true. They are all amazing journalists. And no key evidence that requires a different conclusion. So that would be cogent. Number 7, since Sir Paul McCartney claims that the tune of Yesterday was just there one morning in his head when he woke up after dreaming it being played on a string ensemble, the song probably did come to him in a dream. So the word probably, even though I found that relying on keywords wasn't necessarily tried and true, but it does fit with the other criteria for inductive reasoning. It is probably that made me think it's inductive. So I marked inductive. It is a strong argument. He says publicly that that's how it happened. It probably did happen. I believe the premise is true. I think that I've heard that before. And there's no key evidence that requires a different conclusion. So I would say that that is a cogent inductive argument. Number 8, the last 4 cherry pies I bought from Marie Callender's restaurant were fabulous. So the next cherry pies I buy will be fabulous too. That is definitely inductive. It's basing that kind of trend to predict the next one, not necessarily certain, but it is probable. It is inductive argument. It is strong. If you are consistently getting good products from a place, it is reasonable to assume that your next one will be good as well. Premises are true. Key evidence ignored that requires a different conclusion. That would be absolutely no. Yeah, no key evidence ignored, and that would therefore be a cogent argument. So those are my answers for this week. I think overall I would say that what helped me most was trying to map everything out beforehand. I think this was my key tool in getting through these this week. I also marked ones that you can see my check marks. I marked ones that I felt really confident in. And then ones that I was uncertain of, I kind of did a preliminary run through and then I went back and looked at them. And there are still some that I don't necessarily feel super confident on. I think this is something that definitely takes quite a bit of practice. So I hope we get to work on this type of work a little bit more because I do feel like I wish I could get some more practice in and have answers so that I can correct what I did. I'm not sure if there's answers in this book, but I would love to keep working on this and practicing on it so I know where I can move forward and what to correct.